purchase of a historical marker at Fort Nash Borough. And I do have a letter from the sponsor to approve, and the sponsor is here. And I have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Resolution is recommended. Next is RS 2016-426, sponsors O'Connell, Cooper, and Allen. This approves an amendment to a parking agreement between Metro Installment Redevelopment Partners, LLC, for the use of parking spaces in the courthouse parking garage and to extend the expiration of the term to that agreement from 2046 to 2053. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mrs. Hurt. Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How many of these spaces are going to be utilized, and how is that going to impact any public spaces that are used?
I'm going to let Mr. Jameson answer that.
175 spaces.
But they've already been used. They've already been in use, is that correct?
Right, that's correct. This is a continuation of that arrangement.
Any other questions? Good question. All right, seeing no one else in the queue. All those in favor? Any opposed? Resolution is recommended. Next is RS 2016-427, approves a license agreement between the Nashville Farmers Market and the Tennessee Department of General Services for parking spaces. Been moved. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I would like to ask a question if I might. I didn't see any reference to money changing hands. Is this a lease, but there's no cost for that lease? Is that correct? Great. Okay, so we're getting those parking spaces for free. Any other questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious how many spaces and, where exactly the parking lot, and if anybody can share any detail on the parking.
I see Tasha Kennard heading towards the microphone. And I'm looking for the public table. Hold on.
Oh, thank you. As of right now, they have evaluated, Public Works has evaluated it, and I believe we're getting 90 to 92 spaces. And it is located off of 6th Avenue on the other side of Bicentennial Mall, and you can enter it through Joe Gillum Way. So it's less than a block from the facility, and it's well lit and sidewalk to the parking lot.
Great.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gilmore.
Yep, I just wanted to support this. I know myself and Council Lady Hurd and Councilmember O'Connell and actually some people, our different state representatives actually really advocated for this parking so that the farmers market would be successful. And so we had about 10 or 20 people together, and our public works people, which we really appreciate them from the local level, and then the state, some of the commissioners that actually approved the plan for the farmers market and the demolition, everything were present. So I just wanted to say we definitely support it, and we appreciate our representatives, which was Beck and a couple others. I hate to call names because you forget them, but that they really advocated on our behalf for us at the local level to get some things done. Yeah, and Representative John Ray Clemens as well helped, and it was a couple others, but we really appreciate that because that was one collaboration that was really positive at our local level. Good. So we want to acknowledge that.
We should acknowledge that and learn from it. Thank you. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to follow up on Council Lady Gilmore's remarks here. The combined creativity of farmers market staff and vendors, our Davidson County delegation and folks working with the State Museum project, and council members who have been working on this to provide some relief for parking there. Anybody who has been down there, particularly on the weekends or for night market, recognizes that even with alternative solutions in terms of surface parking or transit and other modes, there's still a very real parking crunch there. So this is one baby step, and there should be some others that follow to give relief until the museum parking solution is fully available.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? No, thank you. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Resolution is recommended. Oh, could you know? Next is BL 433, sponsors Cooper, Allen, and Elrod. This approves the transfer of franchise rights held by Nashville Data Link LLC to Windstream KDL LLC. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This was one of the many telecom companies that we had spoken about and requested information from. Mr. Jameson, have we gotten that information?
No, we have not. We submitted a letter 10 days ago by certified mail. We did get the certified mail receipt acknowledging their receipt, but we have not received the response to our questions. Some of the questions, just to remind the council members, were to ask for a report summarizing any formal complaints against the company regarding their ability to provide services or comply with franchise obligations. Also, their compliance with small and minority owned telecommunications business participation. Windstream is essentially inheriting or taking over this from Nashville Data. Because of that, we also asked Windstream a third series of questions for the information that is usually provided by an initial franchisee applicant. We've received none of that information, although they did receive by the certified mail receipt the requests.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve? Okay. It's been moved and seconded. I will take a point of privilege and just say I would think we might want to think about deferring until we do get that information, but we have a motion on the floor, which is a reasonable motion, to move on ahead. All those in favor? And I have a show of hands. All those in favor moving forward? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's growing. 6. Okay. 6 in favor. All opposed. I'm having trouble. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a non-recommendation. 6 and 6. Okay. Fair enough. Next is BL 456, sponsors Sledge, Cooper, and Allen. This authorizes the acceptance of property at 0 Wedgwood Avenue from the MDHA to Metro. I do have a letter from the sponsor to approve. Do you have a motion? Do you have a second? You guys are quiet today. I think I heard a second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-457. Sponsors Pulley, Allen, and Elrod. This abandons existing sewer and water main and sanitary manhole and accepts new sanitary manholes and any associated easements for properties located at 1 University Park Drive and 3704 Rosemont Avenue. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-458, sponsor Sledge, Cooper, and others. This approves an amendment to a lease between the Department of Parks and Recreation and Belmont University. I do have a letter from the sponsor to approve. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-459, sponsors Murphy, Allen, and Pridemore. This approves a license agreement between the Metro Department of Human Resources and Operation Stand Down, Tennessee, for the use of office space. I do have, I am a co-sponsor on this, and I would move approval. If there's a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Now we're on bills on third reading. First is BL 2016-219, sponsors Bednay, Johnson, and others, disapproved by the Planning Commission 9-0. This changes 7.84 acres from R10 to RS10 zoning for property located at Forest View Drive, unnumbered, 430 feet east of Murfreesboro Pike. Do I have a motion? And Councilmember Johnson.
I move to defer until April 18, 2017.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to defer until April 18th, 2017.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of a deferral? Any opposed? Bill is deferred. Thank you. Next is BL 2016-302, as amended by Pridemore, Allen, and others. This grants a franchise to Tennessee Backhaul Networks, LLC, to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications system within the Metro government. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Again, I would like to take a point of privilege and ask our, they did submit a report, and they responded to our request, which I appreciate, and we do have our consultant on hand. If I could get you to grab the microphone over there on the planning table. And we'd just appreciate your comments on this report, since since you're the expert.
Thank you. Hunter Stewart with CNX, Connected Nation Exchange. Now, Madam Chair, are you asking about the extranet report?
This one is Tennessee backhaul.
Tennessee backhaul.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. We did receive the report last week on the application that they had submitted, or the letter of application. There is no true application. We received the minority hiring report and the background information on any relative lawsuits. The name of the company, Mobility, is doing business as Tennessee Backhaul Network in Tennessee. Therefore, it's a new company with very little history, limited. So therefore, we're not going to see any complaints. So a part of our report, Madam Chair, will be go back to Mobility and ask for where they operate similar business models, i.e. small cells. What complaints have they had on those markets, and what the doing business as name? In our research, we found 78 names that tie back to Mobility's corporate headquarters, and yeah, it's a very onerous search. We started with Mobility, but until we get the actual names of the operating entities, it's hard to do a factual check. We have researched where the state of Minnesota has questioned Mobility's inference to constituents there that they are empowered by the PUC. There's some discrepancy of the grant that was given to Mobility in that market, and they've been asked not to infer that they're acting under the authority of the as a telephone company under the auspices of the PUC. So we're trying to dig further into that case, Madam Chair, and trying to develop the full rationale for that. And I apologize, I'm not an attorney, so I have to rely on my law firm out of Denver that's doing our research for us.
Okay.
But we have, as I said, the minority hiring report. I have not looked at that, to be honest, ma'am.
But they have submitted that.
They have submitted that.
And that is available for us to look at.
And we're preparing an entire critique that will be ready in about 10 days of the entire application and the status of Tennessee Backhaul Network.
Okay, excellent. And then, Mr. Jameson, can you remind us of the, 6 things we were, as a council, we are supposed to evaluate their character, their financial stability?
Right, and this was, am I on?
When we changed from having a public hearing to asking them to submit a report.
Right, we submitted a letter to Tennessee Backhaul October 21st. It was received October 24th. It requested the same information we request in the initial applications, and that is that the applicant possesses the necessary legal, character, financial, technical, and other qualifications to construct and achieve full activation of its system.
Thank you. And so I would ask again, we appreciate the information on the legal, and I think we'll have some discussion on that. In terms of the other categories that were mentioned here, would you say they meet a standard that you would hold them up to?
From a technical standpoint, certainly. From an operational mode, certainly. But we will delve into those in our final report.
Into the legal questions. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Glover.
Then in this one, because this is a 15-year agreement, basically, on this one, I would almost think that we would defer this until we do have those answers, just to make sure we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. So with that, I would, how much of a deferral would it make sense for? 1 meeting, 2 meetings?
Our report will be ready to release and publish on the 14th.
Of November.
Of November, yes, ma'am.
Well, then, let's see. I would almost say that if we could, Madam Chair, to defer it at least 1 meeting for that report to come back and re-refer it back to this committee.
Okay. Thank you. I believe the 15th will be. That'll be the day that we meet. Okay. That will be the day after this committee meets. So is that correct?
No, the 14th will be the day this committee
meets.
meets.
Right, Halloween today. That's right.
So, I mean,
okay.
and I don't mind deferring it 2 meetings. It's just I don't know that we need 2 meetings.
Okay, one meeting has been suggested. And Councilmember N.G. Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not a member of this committee, but I did, I guess in our last committee meeting, I guess it was before Budget and Finance, we did inquire, Council Lady Weiner and I, as to some additional questions. And I just wondered, sir, from a consulting standpoint, can you share, are you engaged by the planning department just to address this on kind of a broader framework of how our city's engaging with these franchise agreements and small cells and so forth, but going forward, and maybe historically, not knowing, being new to council, when we make decisions around these franchise agreements, it seems like we had somewhat of a kind of old archaic method of how we determined these things. And I feel that, I'm grateful that you all are doing the research that you are doing, but I wonder, this is working for this situation now, but do we have a structure in place for future franchise agreements? I mean, it kind of seems like there should always be an expert of some sort making a determination on this rather than members of Budget and Finance and members of the Planning Commission that don't really understand, frankly, this. But we're fortunate to have a consultant in place now, but in the future, would that be the case? So I apologize. That's kind of all over the place as a question, but.
There has been a discussion about further amendments to Title VI to suggest or submit these applications to a qualified telecommunications expert in the future, and that is still up for discussion. I might add, while I have the microphone, we do have Mr. Phillips here who may want to comment on the deferral request.
That's an excellent point. Mr. Phillips, would you like to comment?
Good evening. I'm Roger Simpson with Mobility Tennessee Backhaul Networks. With regards to, I guess you say, some of the comments and questions raised, I'm really interested in what the consultant raised, because it seems to have identified some concerns here that maybe we could address with some additional information. I think the consultant raised some questions before certain regulatory bodies as to the extent of what that regulatory body has granted mobility the rights to do. Is that a fair restatement of what you were raising?
Well, that's from the case in Minnesota we referenced.
Are you saying a case?
Well, it was, I'm not saying a case, excuse me. Excuse me, I'm not a lawyer. Let me reframe that. We've been told, I got it from an attorney in Denver, research back that there was an issue in Minnesota under the Public Utilities Commission and the authority that Mobility represented they had under their franchise agreement. I have not studied it in depth, but we will be reviewing that.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I think it'd be fair to say that there is no case. Because of what Mobility is doing based on federal policy from the FCC, which really promotes a lot of direction and encouragement to local jurisdictions to open up their right-of-ways for the deployment of infrastructure for the access to broadband networks. Mobility is deploying its infrastructure in the right-of-way based on its CLEC status that it has with the TRA. And of course, we have this status with all 50 states across the nation. But because our deployment effort is new, most telecommunications infrastructure in the past has been on private property. The FCC has looked at this and saw that just that pathway has been and is an impediment for the rapid deployment of broadband networks. So it has very strongly encouraged jurisdiction, not removing time, place, and manner, but to not impede the deployment of infrastructure in the right-of-way. So this is new. And so because of this, some jurisdictions have reached back out to their TRAs or PSCs or PUCs and say, hey, you have granted them this CLEC status, a competitive local exchange status, and state statute gives them the right to use the right-of-way, but this is new to us, and we're not familiar with how this works. Can you provide maybe some additional information or clarification? And so that's not new to us. We are constantly involved in an education process, comment process with regards to what state rights have been given by state legislatures for companies that are like us. We're a little different than what fiber does. Fiber does it under the ground. We deploy this type of connectivity above ground. So it produces a lot of better opportunities as far as much as speed to market and less, tearing up of city streets and a huge reduction in cost. But I just wanted to clarify, and I appreciate the opportunity to share that, because there are questions because of the new deployment structure that the FCC is really encouraging access into the right-of-way. It does create some questions back from jurisdictions to those regulatory bodies as to, hey, this is new. Can you give us some additional insight on that?
Thank you. And I think you understand it's new for us too, and we appreciate the education that we're getting as we go through this kind of for our first time, so we appreciate that.
Yes.
Any other, I do see several other people in the queue. Mr. Pridemore.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak, even though I'm not on the committee. I just like to, maybe I'd like for our consultant to really be clear as to what now is being requested. You know, this company has been, this bill has been before us since May. I mean, and they have done everything that they've been asked to do. And now they're coming up with a hearsay report of maybe there's of a company that may be related to this company. You know, we need to move on. I mean, we can move on from, we can keep deferring this week after week, meeting after meeting, asking for more information. And I appreciate if the information is necessary, but now we're asking for, because of someone said something about something, we're deferring it again. So my only wish, and I appreciate that, but that the request to defer it for more information, but I would ask that you would ask, being the chair of the committee, to clarify exactly what they're wanting and what they're going to be investigating, so this company can move on and fulfill its contract with Metro government. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilmember Glover, are you back up again? Okay. Councilmember Glover. You're on.
You know, I think that we're witnessing right now when we move on certain situations, we now are in our third lawsuit because we moved a little too quickly on another bill. I think deferring this for 2 weeks to see a report, because this is a 15-year agreement. This isn't, this is not a 1-week agreement or 3 years or 5 years. It's 15 years. And so therefore, I think 2 weeks is not going to kill us on what we're doing on the deployment. Not saying that we're not going to support it. I just simply believe that we need to finish doing our due diligence on this because we see what the other has gotten us at this point. So that's why I feel like it's prudent to defer this for one meeting and come back with the report to where there's not a he said, she said, but there's actual, if there's anything there, we can see it and then make an informed decision. So I would renew the one meeting deferral.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Jamison just to give us some information about options we may want to talk about with regard to one meeting versus 2 meeting deferrals.
If the committee defers one meeting under Rule 24, tomorrow night you will have no choice but to defer. If the committee defers 2 meetings tomorrow night, based on whatever could change in the next 24 hours, the regular council committee, regular meeting could ignore that recommendation and not defer it. That's just an option. So let me repeat that. So the way Rule 24 reads is if a committee defers a meeting, defers a bill 1 meeting, it shall be deferred. So your option would be defer it 2 meetings to get out from under that rule, if you want, because something may happen in the next day. The other thing I would just clarify while we're here is you'll recall the number of deferrals you can have before it becomes indefinite. That's by the sponsor's request. This is a committee-requested deferral, so it won't turn it into an indefinite deferral, just to be clear.
So at the moment, we have a one meeting deferral on the table. We have had some options explained to us. Our consultant feels like the 1 meeting deferral will give him time to answer. He is simply, as our consultant, doing due diligence and telling us information. He has clearly said he's not a lawyer. He's simply telling us what's out there, and we'll come back with the full report at the next meeting. That being said, we have a 1 meeting deferral on the table. Is there a second to that? Okay. Any more discussion on the deferral? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 1 meeting deferral, and then we'll have a report, and then we may be ready to move on with this. We appreciate the opportunity to feel like we know what we're doing. Write that down. Next is BL 2016-399. Sponsors Potts changes 1.92 acres from R6 to RM15A property zoning for property located at 322 Wallace Road. I do have a letter from the sponsor. Is there a motion? Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Bedney.
I need to be recorded as abstaining.
Okey-doke. Duly noted. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended with one not voting. We're up to 13 now. Next is BL 2016-407. Sponsor is Scott Davis. This changes 1.08 acres from RS10 to R6A zoning for properties located at 2003, 2005, 2007, 2009, 2011, 2013, and 2015 Overby Road. I do have a letter from the sponsor to approve. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-432, sponsors Cooper, Allen, and Elrod. This grants a franchise to Extenet Systems to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications system within the metropolitan government. Do you have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. This, again, is a company that we asked for a report on, which Mr. Jameson says was just handed to him. So my guess is that that would mean that our consultant has not had time to look at that. Probably. So, and I see some people in the queue. Councilmember O'Connell.
I actually, this might be a question for Mr. Jameson. I'm pretty sure, was this one also just reviewed by Budget and Finance, or was that a different one?
Approved by Budget and Finance Committee previously.
Never mind, that was a different one. Okay, so in which case, I guess I will let others discuss the just received report. Thanks.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Glover.
Well, I'm going to refer to Mr. Jameson on this. Mr. Jameson, is this something that we probably should defer as well, and to where you can review it, get back with us, and re-refer it back to the committee? Or, I mean, I just don't know the extent of what this really delves into as much.
This may be an option where if you defer it, you may want to go with the 2-meeting route to give you options tomorrow. I have not opened this, but I'm going to open it as soon as we're done and send it to you.
All right, then, Madam Chair, if I may, I will defer 2 meetings, and then tomorrow night you can handle it as you see fit after Mr. Jameson's review.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for a 2-meeting deferral. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is deferred. That's all the items on our agenda, but I did want to bring up a request that was made to have a special meeting for this committee to discuss the expansion of the USD. It was brought up probably 6 weeks ago before all the separate community meetings have been held. So I would say, and Rosie has worked her tail off trying to find a time when we could do that, but we have so many special meetings happen that it has yet to be scheduled. November 7th is a possibility. So I would entertain discussion on if we still need that meeting or if all of the individual meetings have covered that, and if so, if November 7th is a possibility. Mr. Glover.
I will not be able to attend that particular night.
November 7th is not necessary. Any other thoughts on if this is still needed or not? Y'all are not helping me very much. Are those yeses or nos? Okay, Councilmember Bedney.
Do you remember who requested a meeting? I mean, we had a meeting in the Southeast, and it was very informational. So I wonder if it's such an old meeting that whoever requested it, if they can say if they are still interested in having it.
Good question. Anybody remember who requested that? I did not write it down. Okay. Councilmember Syracuse.
It's not needed from a 15th district perspective.
Okay, that's helpful to know. Councilmember, let's see, Glover, you've spoken. Van Rees.
Similarly, not Bridemore on his way out, he said, if it comes up, tell him we don't need it. So on both of our sakes, we would say we don't need that.
Okay. So I would ask for a show of hands of people who feel like we do still need this. That is very helpful. Thank you. Councilmember Syracuse, did you get? You're good. Okay. Then I would recommend that we let the community meetings that have been held serve their purpose, and we withdraw the request to have a special meeting for that because we have other special meetings that we've done. Councilmember Bedney.
Yeah, to the people that are watching it on Channel 3, there will be an opportunity for them to speak out at the public hearing when we review this legislation. So I think this was just a meeting for us.
That's correct.
And we already had, I think, discussed everything, but for the public, there is an opportunity at the public hearing.
Okay, thank you for making that point. With that being said, then I would say we are adjourned.
Now we're clear.